this is a little bit more common, but there's what's his name? Hassan, the gym freak. He was an up-and-coming lifter. He competed at the American Pro over in the States. But he's a registered nurse. And he just posted randomly him in like scrubs and stuff, and like his work like uniform. And he's very, very strong, like 380 kilogram squatter. And he's a nurse.
Yeah, I like that. You get so used to the stereotype of what these big jacked people are doing. Were you going to grab a chair, Jeordie? I hit record, but I don't mind if this isn't part of it. Yeah, I'm happy to leave it in.
Check that it's actually his Instagram though. Sound the gym freak.
Anyway,
he like disappeared.
Well, while you bring him up, let me introduce. I don't know what we're calling this because it's not Thomas's
solo session.
It's not a solo session because I'm not solo.
Plus ones.
And it's not a full Zero podcast because our guests are like 400 pairs of sleeves sitting on the ground that smell like fish being aired out. So this was actually Lilley Riley's idea. She was like, why don't you interview your lifters? Because I think people would like to hear about that. And a lot of people have suggested it as well, but I don't listen to a lot of people. I listen to Lilley. So Lilley said it. I was like, you know what? That's a cool idea. Theo's got a bit of time up his sleeve this week, and James and Bridget are gone, so why not? So welcome back. You've already been introduced.
Second podcast.
Yes.
Family favorite.
So I'm not going to do the whole introduction. When did you start lifting? How did you get into it? What are your best numbers? All that, because just go back and listen to Theo's full episode. That was a really good episode, actually. Lots of people really love that one.
Yeah, I got a lot of people complimenting me on it as well. Yeah.
So the point of this is to kind of talk through lifters that I've worked with and their journey to the elite level, which of course Theo is no stranger to. What's your current ranking on the deadlift board of all time?
I have the heaviest deadlift by a 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old in history, and I'm the rank 1 junior deadlifter in all weight classes, all federations, or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
And overall?
Overall, I'm number 6, I
number
think.
6.
Or tied number 6 with Yuri Belkin.
At 440?
445.
445.
Yeah, pretty much everybody on that initial open powerlifting page is well known. I know all of them. Everybody above me I know personally. I follow on social media. So
do you know the order? Is it Danny, Colton, Jamal?
Danny, Colton, Jamal. You've got Benny in there.
Benny. Then it'll be Yuri U? Or is there someone else in there?
Kayla Woolham, maybe?
Isn't Kayla's best 440?
Let me find it.
Anyway, while you're having a look at that, I don't even know what I was going to say. Do you remember what your numbers, like you said, all-time 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, do you remember what they are for each?
Yeah, of course I do. It's my entire personality. When I was 19, I pulled 390 kilos. These are all competition lifts, so refereed, blah, 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 comp specs, no straps. Pulled 390 at 19. I pulled 410 at 20. I pulled in a 3-lift comp, I pulled 417.5 at 21 and 420 in a deadlift only. And then at 22, I pulled 445.
The 417 and 420 were like 2 weeks apart.
They were, yeah. And every single one of those, aside from the 445, was mixed grip as well.
So this comp just done nationals is the first return to hook gripping competition?
The ZeroW Pro was.
ZeroW Pro.
Yeah, where I got really cooked on the day as well, but I pulled 422.5 or something, and then went for the YOLO 450, beat Chris Kennedy, take all the glory. Yeah. It's Christoph, the Polish dude.
Of course. So was that pull in the IPF? Or is that
I sincerely doubt it.
Post IPF status?
I'm not sure. It's always hard to tell with some of these like European meets what like federation they're affiliated with.
Mm. All right, so your 390 when you were 19, that was here. That was the first comp that
first debut
we ever did together. You're 22 now or 23?
I'm 22. I turned 23 in like a month or two.
All right, sweet. So we've been working together for 3 years now.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Doesn't feel like that long.
No, we talked about this the other day with Megami. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to.
They didn't hear that. All right.
No, I don't know if you want to talk about that. Well, yeah. You and Megami just started dating around that time when we started, probably very, very similar timing, actually.
That's right, because you were saying Theo was over at dinner the other night. I think it was over at dinner or here, can't remember, somewhere, and you were saying that you don't really remember her at that competition. It's kind of like, well, that's because we'd only sort of just got together. She wasn't.
I didn't say I didn't remember her. Just she was like extremely nice. She was like, "Hi Theo, how are you?" This is at weigh-ins, and I was there by myself, and I had like a box of LCMs to eat after weighing in, and she was extremely nice to me, and I was like, I have no idea who you are. It's I get the same thing here where people are like excessively friendly to me, and I'm just like, how do you know me? I feel like I should remember. Like, do I not remember you? Should I remember you? Have we spoken before? It just kind of threw me off a little bit.
All right, so what was the total at that meet when you were 19 and you did the 390 here?
962.5.
Okay, and what's your best total since?
1027.5 maybe. Yeah, I've really struggled to put up a good 3 lift total since I was early 20s. Yeah.
So obviously in that time you've moved country, you've come over here, and we'll talk about that in a bit. I guess one question I'm trying to think from the perspective of what would people want to hear us talk about if we're talking about like your journey with Zero. What would you say are some of the biggest changes to your training that you've made since you've come on board with me and with Zero?
That's a very open-ended question. Well, I was with, like I mentioned before we started this, I was with Joey Flex for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. And I got pretty beaten up by the volume in his programming. Like, this is no like diss to Joey Flex or anything. No. And I remember explicitly kind of crying out for a deload, and I could feel my knees starting to fall apart. And I remember I've got very vivid memories of when we first started coaching. The very first week was a deload week, and I did a set of 3 at 260 kilos at North Shore Barbell on the North Shore of Auckland. And immediately coming out of that deload, I basically PR'd my lifts at prescribed RPE just because I was holding so much fatigue.
At the time, you were doing a very physically intensive job as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Joey was hilarious in regards to that. Yeah, I did port work at the Port of Auckland, insurance/surveying. So I would do on like an 8-hour shift, I'd do 30,000 to 36,000 steps. And I remember telling Joey about it, and he just immediately was like, "Quit your job." Because like, if you want to be good at the sport, you have to quit your job. There's no way that you can. Because I was still like 134, 136 kilos at the time, and it just cooked me. I had to eat 9,000 calories a day of like biscuits and milk in order to actually show up to a training session and be somewhat functional the next day.
I mean, it's a lot of output.
I could not do that now at all.
Yeah.
Hand on heart at all.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to the question, then one of the big changes was just like the overall workload was probably decreased and more frequent deloads. What else?
Well, I didn't know hugely. Do you want me to talk about specifically for me as an athlete, or do you want to talk about in general?
Talk in general, and then specifically.
In general, you had a lot of educational content around the time, still even at that time, and I remember just going through all of that, and I would do the same with Joey. Joey had a little bit as well, and I would kind of sift through his stuff, and I did the same with yours, and I found a lot of the training principles were a little bit easier to kind of understand. And then when it came to, so that allowed me to like basically upskill myself as an athlete to understand Zero's programming better so that I could auto-regulate better on my own. And then specifically for me, the financial side of things was actually a big thing. Joey said, "Quit your job." And I was like, "Hey, Joey, that's the only reason that I can afford to pay you." And then you kind of came in and were like, "Hey, sponsored athlete, ? Could be good." And even just purely off of not having to pay for coaching week to week, that was like more money that I could spend on milk. Genuinely, that was like a huge thing. And I remember talking to my partner at the time and being like, this is a no-brainer. And that's how I worded it to Joey. I was like, this is an opportunity that I can't turn down. I'd be stupid to turn it down. No bad blood, that kind of thing.
So you heard it here first. The key is not actually the programming and the technique and the coaching. It's just the extra milk.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to clarify.
Yeah. All right. Then more specifically, what do you feel are the changes that sort of started to, I guess, impact your progress a little bit more as well?
If we talk specifically from a programming perspective, and I compare it to Joey, I was doing a lot of. Joey has he programs like undulating singles. So you have like RP6 1 week, RP7, RP8, and I was a reasonably advanced lifter at that age. Like I was still strong, but I was still new. Like I was 19, I was a teenager, and I found it very difficult to adhere to true RPEs without going overboard and getting kind of like, more next week. And I found like the weight prescriptions of ZeroW and the more conservative kind of actual volume work versus just doing singles. I found that a lot better for athlete burnout and just overall performance, because I would end up burning myself out on singles to the point where I didn't do my volume work, I didn't do my accessories.
When you say adherence to those singles, are you sort of suggesting that when you were younger, you were 18, 19 years old, it was more the temptation of just trying to lift heavy?
Yeah. For sure, yeah. Well, I'd have like an RP8 single programmed, and I would do, let's just say, like 360, and then I'd have an RP7 single the next week, and I would be like, 360 could probably move at RP7, and then I'd have next week I would have another RP8, and I'd be like, well, I did 360 2 weeks ago, maybe I could do 370, and there was just basically tried to like linear periodization, just go up and up and up and up and up. And it caught up with me very quickly to the point where I started scrapping my other accessories, my back downs, my blah, blah, blah. And so that's more of like an athlete maturity thing on my end, though.
Sure. You still max out a bit.
If I train, yeah.
So from my perspective, when I bring on sponsored lifters, it's not because they're the strongest people always. Like strength plays a role in terms of my selection of who I sponsor. But there's more than that. I do character references before I even reach out. So I'd ask people about you and about your personality and about who you are. And you were like,
who did you ask?
Hey?
Who did you ask?
That doesn't matter. Just people.
Who could you ask?
It's just people. I know people. I'm plugged in. Don't worry. I'll tell you later. I'd ask people, but more than that, like because you were doing your training, or at least what you were posting about your training was very deadlift heavy, because like the standout thing if you went to your page back then would be like, I think there was a pin post of a 380 deadlift.
Yeah, I would just post deadlifts.
Remember the
it was paradox. I'm good at deadlifts. I do more deadlifts. I post deadlifts. So I become a deadlift only page.
Yeah, but I think that's what most people's perspective would be when they go there. So when I go to a page, well, when I'm looking, okay, well, do I reach out to this person? Do I chat to them or whatever? I'm not just looking at the deadlift because I coach powerlifters. So a lot of people would see a heavy deadlift and write off everything else. Comparatively, I think back then you were squatting around 300, 320, somewhere in the low threes maybe.
I'd say low.
Or high twos?
No, low threes for sure. Definitely low threes.
I think you had done 320.
Yeah.
I think
310, 320. I was probably around that range when we started working together, yeah.
Yeah, so you look at that next to the 380 and most people just go, well, 380 is way bigger, therefore this person's a deadlifter. Where it's like, well, no, there's like, where are the bottlenecks in his squat? Where are the bottlenecks in his technique overall? Where is his bench sitting at? And so I saw, a diamond ready to be carved out of the lump of coal into a powerlifter, right?
Golden child.
And so then we had a conversation, which was good. We spoke about like, basically you were talking about that sort of stuff that you just mentioned in terms of training principles aligning, which is really important from an athlete perspective. You have to have buy-in, you have to have accountability. And we had a conversation around PEDs as well. I don't know how happy you are to talk about that stuff. I mean, we spoke about it on our last podcast, obviously.
Yeah.
I guess I want to ask, your journey into that world is compared to when I was coming up in powerlifting, which is like 15 years ago, is relatively young, which is coming more commonplace. People are entering into that world younger and younger, it seems, which is not to be glorified at all. I don't really impart any sort of moral judgment on anyone. I try to educate people as best that I can, and granted, I'm certainly not an expert in that field. But one thing that's important to me is that people know what they're getting into. And this is like one of your micro niche fields of expertise, right? Like even from a very young age, you had studied
special
that.
Interests, full autism, special interest, yeah.
Very in depth. So you're having high level conversation about that sort of stuff when you were 19. I guess my question is, has that continued to be a special interest?
Yeah, no, it has, yeah, for sure. And then since I was 19, I started doing, I did consulting on the side as like something that I didn't advertise for, mostly just close mates and stuff. And then recently in the last, I'd say year, I've started branching out a little bit more, I guess you'd say commercially, and done consulting for, powerlifters over in the US at varying levels, that kind of thing. It's not just exclusively like, I feel like when you say PEDs, I feel like a lot of people, and specifically in strength sports, immediately migrate to steroids.
Anabolics,
But when it comes to like women in particular, that is like the riskiest kind of growth pathway or PED pathway to go down, because you get viralization, you get masculinization, whatever. There's so many other things that you can take that fit under the general performance enhancing drug umbrella. And some of those are wider approved. Like caffeine is a PED, creatine is a PED by definition, and some of them are not, like, some of these painkillers. We talked about this on the other podcast as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such an interesting paradigm, because you can see people get so anti-PEDs and then take pre-workout. It's like, well...
It's a lot of internal bias.
Why are you taking that? Because it helps me perform better. Oh, whoa, really?
It's been around for... I'm trying to, I don't want to repeat myself from the last podcast, but taking substances to do better in sports or do better in education or just do better in life has been an integral part of being a human for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's like, you want to get better at sport. Back in AC, like Athens, BC, you try and eat bull testicles for virality, that kind of thing. Early 1800s, 1900s, all sorts of stuff were used.
Yeah, well, just look at the Liver King. Oh. Maybe don't. So what were your early influences in that realm? Because we had a conversation about it. I imparted some opinions. Again, I'm not an expert. You already had a pretty well-rounded knowledge base back then. How did you even start looking into it?
So I wanted to go into genetics at university, and when it's just that hyperfixation, like ADHD kind of personality. When I first started training, I realized that there was this entire world that I'd never even heard of before, and that there was nutrition training. There was so many different methodologies, like West Side, and I just kind of dove in and just kind of I obsessed about it. And I basically learned everything that I could from everywhere that I could. I would take anecdotal information from forums. I would go to educators. I would try and find paid ebooks, content online, even books and libraries I would go to, although I found that was pretty disappointing compared to how easily accessible the stuff on the internet was. And then I did the exact same thing with PEDs. And you always remained very impartial towards it. When I first started talking about hopping on, you were very kind of I feel like a lot of coaches that I've heard about in the past have been kind of potentially quite pushy with drugs. And it always stood out to me that you never really, you were never like that at all with me at all. You never really talked to me about it in that aspect. You were never encouraging. It was more of a, here are the educators that you need. I can get you a call with Broderick, that kind of thing. And I think I really respect the way that you kind of handled it with the age that I was.
Yeah, my mindset with it was, you when we spoke about it, you'd already made your mind up.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen pretty much. Yeah,
typically, if let's say we had started coaching when you were 17 and you got to the stage and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing it. Should I do it? I would probably be swaying you away from it.
Yeah, I definitely would agree.
And really encouraging you to go get an education, but also be patient and wait. And you can do that with lifters. Everyone's going to have their sort of moral age cutoff where they're kind of like, okay, well, you're an adult, you make your own decisions here. But there's also a case to be said, well, if the person then is just like, I'm doing it, my mind's made up, the next moral decision is, well, you either get rid of them completely or you, with your knowledge, expertise, connections, whatever it may be, try to guide them to be the healthiest version of themselves that they can.
Yeah.
And so that's where I sort of fit in this particular scenario.
Yeah, I really appreciated it. It stood out to me a lot that you were very, I feel like impartial maybe has like negative connotations, but you were very like, hey, look, I can get you a call with Broderick Chavez with like Evil GSP, just like if you want any education stuff, here it is. And by that time anyway, I think you had already kind of got a grasp, but I kind of knew what I was talking about. I'd already spent the last 3-4 years kind of just researching it as like a special interest because like I said, once again, researching PEDs doesn't mean I was researching steroids for 4 years. I'd worked in supplement stores by that point in time. Like they're an integral part of training. And so that just kind of gradually fit in to that greater umbrella, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know me, and I remember the conversation distinctly. A lot of it was around like, here's a lot of the mistakes that young people make when they get on. Don't be this sort of person. Here's a bad example of what happens when people do this sort of thing. And I feel like you've stayed very mature through the whole thing. If you were to go back as you are now, I mean, it's only 3 years, you're still very young, but if you went back to 19-year-old yourself, would you have still taken the same path? It's one of these stupid questions where it's like, well, if I didn't, I wouldn't be who I am now, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
like what's the
regret?
What's the advice you would give 19-year-old Theo with your, because back then you can have as much knowledge on PEDs as in the world. The experiential side is very different.
Yeah.
So having the experience, having gone through the pathway that you've gone through, or taken the path that you've taken, is there anything you'd tell 19-year-old Theo?
I knew that I didn't know everything, and I think when I hopped on at 20, I think I would have probably paid more attention to the neurological side of things. And what I mean by that is like I think that like there's a whole bunch of like side effects when it comes to these things that people kind of look at. They're like, oh, I'm getting gynecomastia, whatever. I'm getting mood swings. Those are like acute. You can tell. You can look in the mirror and be like, oh, I've got boobs, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of effects of these like some of these more toxic drugs like Tren, for example, are very dopaminergic. And they kind of degrade the brain over time. And when you're young and you're kind of your brain and your body are in like a key developmental phase, you have a lot of neuroplasticity. I would have respected that, I think, a little bit more in terms of like compound selection and just kind of like what ancillaries I was running. And this is something that I'm only learning more and more about like now. And I don't see people talking about it, like how these drugs actually influence the brain. And it's not something that you really pick up on in 1, 2, 3 years. It's stuff that happens and starts to show 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road. It's just neurological degradation. And it is actually really easily avoided. You just have to be smart and run the right ancillaries.
I can give you plenty of, I mean, I'm not going to say it, but I can give you plenty of examples of people I know who had started heavy drugs when they were heavy performance-enhancing drugs, these kind of toxic compounds that affect the neurology when they were young, that are just probably very different versions of themselves now as adults than they would have been if they didn't. And in quite a noticeable and negative way. With that knowledge and information, then, do you think it has affected you to that point?
I don't personally think so. It's like a degree of magnitude type thing, right? And I think that the more damaged you become over time, it becomes a bigger and bigger issue. There are obviously like a lot of the drugs that are quite neurotoxic, like some of the 19-nors and stuff, I've typically stayed away from in like very high doses and that kind of thing. So I have just been smart inadvertently just with normal PED practices outside of just explicitly thinking about like, is this going to cook my brain or not? That's just normal smart things like, taking time off, that kind of thing. Not keeping your foot just planted on the gas for years and years and years. It's really hard to say though, it's very difficult to kind of like, how would you even measure that? Like you look in yourself in the mirror and be like, am I stupider? Like, do I feel stupider? And like, I don't know. I feel like, but at the same time, like I was studying then as well. So I had all this, I had recently come out of my schooling, that kind of thing. And I was familiar with that. My brain was familiar with thinking in those ways. And I don't do a whole heap of that now. So there's a lot of pathways like writing essays, for example, that I would have just completely lost. But that is normal, though.
That's very normal, yeah. I mean, as someone who knows you reasonably well, my experience with watching this stuff happen in real time, there's pretty distinct personality changes and decision-making changes that these people go through, and that doesn't reign true for you. So really the message you're sending is you've made a sound decision, or you've learned to make more sound decisions as a preventative measure.
Yeah, that's just general, like, being smart with PEDs 101 type thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can have a cigarette now, or have a cigarette every day. You're not going to get lung cancer right now.
Yeah.
But you know that if you do that every day, there's a much higher chance that you're going to be cooked in the future. So it's just...
Yeah, and like, that chance is what I, like, if I can avoid that now, or at least mitigate that, and some of the drugs that you would use to use that will have huge effects on, like, cardiovascular health as well, why wouldn't you? Like, if the option is there, and realistically, these drugs won't have side effects in these therapeutic doses. They are preventative of side effects that you are going to experience or are experiencing. If you have the option to take them and you have the education and the awareness around them, take them. Like, if you are a healthier being, you will perform better. They're not going to actively... They're performance enhancing by definition. By mitigating side effects, that is a performance enhancing benefit.
Mm-hmm. All right. So getting off the PED conversation then, and shifting back towards training. In between the time of us coaching and now, of us starting coaching and now, you've gone through some pretty significant life changes. Like, you've moved country, you've been through relationship stuff. How has this impacted your training? How has this impacted your identity as an athlete, if at all?
If at all, yeah. No, it massively has, yeah. I just feel like I'm at a bit of I feel like I've spent the last year and a half kind of in Australia really struggling to get back on my feet. I'm no stranger to living away from home. Like, I moved out, I feel like it's pretty normal to, like, move out at 18, that kind of thing. Or at least it was for me in my circles. But yeah, like, since moving over to Australia, I just had a bunch of stuff happen, and I struggled to maintain the level of athlete that I was back in New Zealand that originally got me to that kind of peak strength level. Because keep in mind, like, I was at my absolute peak strength right before I moved to Australia. Right before. That's when I pulled my 477 at 21. That's when I was like lining up to bench like 240, 245, and I was looking at squatting probably 400 plus in sleeves. I was very, very strong, and I was much bigger. I was 15 kilos more in body weight. I was sitting at 150 just kind of day to day. Since then, I've just really struggled to get into a routine. I got injured in my AC ligament, which kind of destroyed my training for the next year when it came to bench press and like low bar squats. And I really struggled with fulfillment as an athlete, actually. And I will talk about this on here. Yeah, I really struggled to feel like it was like worth pursuing. I would always kind of think about the analogy of, like, you know, the candle that burns the brightest kind of lasts the shortest period of time. You know, you fizzle out. You have a lot of very strong athletes, or very promising young kind of athletes who, you know, they rise to fame very, very quickly, and then they fizzle out, they get burnt out. And I was very concerned that would be me. And I struggled to feel like getting stronger would be worth it for me, because I had moved over to Australia and I didn't really know too many people, and I was very isolated, and I was injured, and I was in and out of like employment, and still am, to be fair. And I just, you know, when those things are kind of going on in your life, I struggled to care about training, and I struggled to feel like, you know, becoming the strongest person in history was, you know, is that something that's really going to fulfill me as a person? Is that like the life direction that I really want to take? That's just typical like young 20s, young man identity crisis stuff. But there was a period of time where I was genuinely like, you know, do I actually want to pursue powerlifting still at a competitive level? And I think I have talked about this with a couple people recently, but seeing Colton's video in Russia and seeing the level of competition that they put on for him, and then just seeing Colton everywhere on Instagram, on TikTok, all the like the edits, the thousands of followers that he gained from that, just how excited people were to see someone who's just freakishly strong. That was really motivating for me, because I had all of my life direction kind of skewed up when I moved over here, and then I kind of felt like people didn't care if you were strong anymore. You know, I'd done so well in the sport and sacrificed so much for the sport, and then I was kind of left in disarray, isolated, injured, that kind of thing. But it really kind of showed me that people do still care about, you know, people being strong. They still look up to people. You can still be a role model for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And it really started to like kind of break me out of my my disillusionment with the sport. I've said that I've probably reaped 99.9% of the reward that I probably will from the sport. That's the law of diminishing returns. And if I do want to chase Colton, it's going to require a disproportionately large amount of sacrifice. You know, it's that exponential cutoff, if that makes sense. So in order to chase that 0.001% to be the best in history and even attempt to chase Colton down, it's going to require probably more effort and more work and more sacrifice than all of the 4 or 5 years of training that I've put in before that.
I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think you've got a skewed perspective because of the last few years. The last few years have been so disruptive. So for people's context, you actually haven't strung together a decent run of training since about that competition.
Yeah.
Like since you were 19. That's not to say you haven't trained in that time. Of course you've trained. But
since
like
I was 20.
Getting a consistent run of momentum, like as you mentioned, your shoulder blew up.
Yeah.
You went through so many life changes, and like you were 20 and knocking on the door of being the strongest of all time. That hasn't gone anywhere. It's just been paused. And like it hasn't even been rewound. It's literally just been paused. So I don't think that 99.9% thing is completely accurate. And the other thing I'd say, which I hope you have, I assume you have, but I really hope you have the cognitive awareness of the people that are the candle that shine bright and burnt out and fizzled out. They fizzled out generally because of really poor choices.
Yeah.
Whereas yours has just been, again, paused. It's not like you shone bright because you were doing anything horrendously terrible to your body and
I agree on that
running drugs through the roof and everything like that. You had an injury and you had some life changes. And I'm really glad you are. Obviously, I threw that as a leading question. We didn't talk about the fact that we might talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I wanted to really shine an example of this. Actually gives you a really unique point to do what you're doing now in terms of consulting on the PED side of things, but also coaching, because you've, in such a short period of experience, you've actually experienced what's for most people a full career in powerlifting. Like you've started from nowhere, gotten up to the very upper echelons, experienced injury, experienced disruption, experienced the mental stuff that comes with that, and in terms of athlete identity, you've actually kind of speed run your experience in powerlifting, which gives you a very unique position, because most people by the time they get to that point are like me. They're too old and broken to be like, oh, here's all the mistakes, now I can correct course and still be the best. Like if I took what I know now and applied it to me when I was up and coming and hungry for powerlifting, I'd probably be a pretty phenomenal powerlifter. I wouldn't be the best in the world, I don't think that, but I would be a lot better than I ever was. Whereas you're in the unique opportunity to have speed run that section, plus be surrounded by people who have that experience, and at a new starting point where a lot of people haven't even started yet. So
the life experience side of things is like one of the biggest silver linings, regardless of like everything that's happened, and just being like, you could argue that the environmental change has been pretty difficult, but there are definitely like proximity to you and like other high level coaches and having access to these training facilities, and just like the amount of networking and friendships, like professional or personal, and just the amount of people that I've met over here have definitely been a huge boost to me as a person, an athlete, a coach, everything. I think I was talking to Josh about this. It's very hard for people to, because of the level that I have been at or am still at, I think it's very hard for people to look in on just like an Instagram feed and think, oh yeah, he's he's training like normal, things are like normal. But you're right. I haven't put together a genuine block or even 2 blocks of consistent training since I moved over, essentially. And it's very hard for people to see that because all they see is 445 kilo deadlift,
Yeah.
But there's a very real argument that yes, I have gotten stronger on my deadlift, but when it comes to my other numbers, I have been maintaining and in my definition, stagnating, which is another way of saying put on pause.
Put on pause is stagnating is relative to the training input, right? The training input has been so disruptive, and
it's been maintenance phase.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. For whether or not that's something that I actually wanted to do or not, I mean, I would probably say that that wasn't the ideal kind of outcome. Before I moved over, I'd pretty confidently say that I had probably the fastest progression rate in the sport. I got very strong very quickly and then just kept getting stronger. And that was a recurring theme since the moment that I touched weights. Like it was, is he just going to keep stronger? Yes, I did. That's how it works. I'd really like to get back to that though. Yeah, there was the 1100 kg raw total was something that I really wanted to do. The next big thing I think is probably pushing the 1,000 pound deadlift in competition in a 3 lift. That would be really nice. Just the whole number stuff.
Yep.
But relative to my whole kind of training arc as an athlete, they're relatively irrelevant compared to just going for the low hanging fruit. So if you were to ask me what is the most important thing that I could do, it would be getting that routine back, putting together, like, I don't care what I'm squatting in the next 6 months. I would much rather just focus on the process of, can I eat my food today? Can I eat my food tomorrow? Can I train today? Can I train this week? Can I put together a good week of programming, a good week of training? Can I put together 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Because I've learned very quickly to not be focused on outcomes. I learned when I was 19 and 18 that if I sat in a proper program with a proper coach and I didn't max out, I would just get stronger. If I did my volume and I feel really good today, I'm going to max out. I never did that. I just kind of sat in the volume and compared my volume PRs to other volume PRs that I'd done in the past, and yeah.
When you mentioned before about seeing Colton in the Russian comp and that kind of lighting a fire, did you get any of that sort of experience doing the Arnold earlier this year?
Yeah, I think the Arnold was less. The Arnold was more personal for me, but less of a I had already pulled that before, almost a year and a half prior, and so it was nice to be able to replicate that, even on like pound plates or whatever they had there. I was extremely happy to just be seen in that regard. Like I'm from the small town in New Zealand. Even now, so many people message me and they're like, "Oh, I've never heard of you before. How have I not heard of you before?" Because they've gone on open powerlifting and realized that I'm way up the top and I have a fraction of the followers as some of these other dudes. It was just so surreal being recognized by so many people over there and having so many people kind of like shouting at me in the cage. And I told you about this. I was really paranoid that I wouldn't be able to draw a crowd. Because it's like I've got all these numbers and stuff, but I'm not great at self-promotion. I don't like rile up the crowd because I'm not a very riled up lifter myself. I'm not one to yell or like excessively celebrate after a lift, and I was very concerned that I wasn't able to put on enough of a show to be entertaining. So much so that I didn't actually initially put a lifter song choice. Initially, I kept it blank because I didn't want to put any. I didn't want to make a big deal out of myself. But looking back at the footage and seeing me on the big screen and like how many hundreds, if not thousands of people were kind of crowding around and like yelling at me and stuff and watching me lift, that was, I haven't had that before. And I felt extremely privileged to have people coming up to me and asking me to sign things. And, they're like, "Oh, you're one of the greats already." And I'm like, having dinner with Dan Green and being like, "Oh my God, I've been watching this guy since I started powerlifting. Like, how am I eating tacos with him right now? That's insane." I had another small microdose of that at Capo Nationals last year because Stan Efferding was there.
Yeah.
And there was this little like staff only back room, like this little courtyard area of the venue, and it was just me and him. and he knew who I was. He had seen my stuff before, and I was talking to him about my numbers and stuff, and I was like, I just had another moment of like surreal, just kind of like, oh, I'm talking to the vertical diet creator, and he knows who I am, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, just coming to terms with like that athlete identity where I've got all these achievements, but also the time that I've actually spent in the sport is very small.
Yeah. I mean, like your crowd was probably one of the biggest ones of the weekend. I think it really helped that you were bleeding heaps as well. Made it look a little bit hardcore because you don't hype up the crowd. It was like the blood made it a little bit cool.
That's why we have pink hair for showmanship, even though I'm colorblind. For them, it's cool. And then I put on I got asked what my final deadlift song was, and I put the New Zealand haka. That's what I put over the speakers.
Yeah.
And you can just faintly hear it in the videos that they posted and that I heard. And I remember being able to hear it when I was setting up to like put chalk on, blah, blah, blah. And then it just got drowned out.
Yeah.
I think because of the nature of the haka, it's just a bunch of people like essentially screaming. I think the crowd then kind of was like, oh yeah, the crowd's huge. And then the crowd just got really, 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 really loud on top of the haka. And it just kind of riled everybody up, which is what it's supposed to do. Like that's kind of best case scenario. Don't get me wrong.
Well, because it's off that YouTube video. So you had said, let's get this on. So I went up to the DJ and I put this on. So we did it on I can't remember if you did it. Did you do it for the 3 last? Like the 4, you went kind of 420-ish, which was really like 430, 470. And
no, I saved it for the
470.
I saved it for the 470. Yeah, the 469 point something, yeah.
So he put it on and then you were going for the 502 and you're like, can you tell him to turn it up?
Yeah.
So I went up to him and I'm like, bro, can you turn it up way louder? And he's like, this is as loud as it goes.
Yeah.
So I went back to you and I didn't lie, but I was like, I told him to turn it up.
Yeah.
I didn't have the heart to be like, he said, no, it can't go any louder. I just wanted you to believe it was louder.
At that point, I didn't need the song for lifting because of like how hyped I was from the crowd. Like the crowd screaming at me was basically what the haka was supposed to do in the first place, right? Yeah. I think the experience for everybody that was watching it by listening to it and like kind of getting a little kind of taste of like who I am as an athlete through the actual haka. That's probably I think I delivered on that front.
So is the kind of priority for you right now, just from a training perspective, what you were just saying before in terms of, okay, like the priority needs to be finding a little bit more of the process again, just like dialing in some consistency with eating, with life stuff, with showing up and training?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get all like existential, but I'm very, very different now as an athlete to how I was. I never had to think about going to the gym. I never had to think about eating food. It was always something that came very naturally to me, and it was very second nature. And I've just been so thrown out of whack with my life circumstances, my environment, my lack of routine that I've lost all those subroutines, like all the stuff that came naturally and subconsciously to me. I've kind of now lost, and I really need to try and I have to put effort in again now to bring that back up. Because if you were to ask me like unobjectively, would you consider yourself to be a good athlete right now? And I would say no, because there's all of these at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs when it comes to nutrition, recovery, stress management, training. I'm really failing. Like, and this is just like my honest. I'm not like being weird about it. I'm really failing, or have been failing, to uphold so many of those. Which is weird because it's like I'm still in the arguably like the upper, like in Australia, like I'm at the very top, but I'm struggling to do the basics, and it's a little bit jarring for me. So it's an interesting dichotomy for me to kind of deal with, one that I can get in my head about if I'm not careful.
Yeah, for sure. And like, thankfully, it's kind of like it's almost kind of like muscle memory. It doesn't take long to come back, but the space while you're in it can be scary. So, I mean, you've got the support of us. We got your back the whole way through, brother. Yeah,
it's like I do enjoy it is the thing, and I think that's like I haven't fallen out of love with it in terms of enjoyment of training. I do enjoy the simplicity of it. I enjoy the simplicity of providing adequate stimulus and then adequate building blocks through eating the right foods and the right quantities, and then magically, but not magically at all, you get stronger, you get results. 1 + 1 = 2. Being able to sit down in spreadsheets, and this ties into coaching as well. It's extremely satisfying for me. One of the biggest issues that I have with like PED consulting, especially, is if I'm not careful, I will just sit down and I will ask way more questions than I need to, and I'll sit in the spreadsheet doing things for hours, like 6, 7, 8 hours, just because I want to. I do the same for myself, and it's just like, it's completely unfeasible. But it's just the enjoyment of and the satisfaction, especially when it comes to athletes that I coach as well, when they do really well. And I think you'll experience this a lot, where you say, you know, if you do this, you're going to find this, and they're going to feel like this. And then they do that, and they find that, and they're like, oh, you were right. You're like, yeah. And that builds up the athlete coach trust as well. But I just find it really satisfying when they kind of follow the same thought process that I did when I was young, when I first discovered that, because I know what it feels like. You know, I think a lot of people, I was talking about this on the ride here. I feel like a lot of people, when they first start out, they kind of like mysticize strength. It's like, you know, it's kind of, what's the one secret deadlift exercise that all the elites are doing that nobody else is doing? At its core, if you provide adequate stimulus with adequate building blocks, you will get stronger. That's my opinion. It's not even opinion.
That's fact.
I can keep talking about this as well. I can go into like, do we have time?
No, not really. But I guess what that highlights is it's clearly showing that you're developing a passion for coaching. And the most, like, obviously, you know, we spend time with each other outside of just a coach-client relationship. And in the past 6 months, after post Nats and you talking about your lifters, is probably the most alive I've seen you about something in quite a while. Like, you're clearly very passionate about coaching at the moment.
Well, I mean, cool. Nationals was personal performance was not great, but no, I found myself a lot more excited for some of the athletes that I was handling and coaching than my own lifts. I think it's probably one of the most expressive ways that I like. That's one of the most expressive kind of moments for me in general. Like, I don't get very expressive about my own lifting, but when it's in regards to an athlete that I'm handling, then it's like, oh, I'm shouting. I don't normally do that.
And is coaching something that you are pushing and pursuing? Like, do you have active coaching spots? Are you willing to take people on at the moment?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, for sure. I've had quite a few people, well, not quite a few people, but I've had a few people message me after nationals, just asking kind of like, you know, testing the waters, like, do you coach females, that kind of thing? And I do. I handled two women at nationals, and they both did amazing national records. And it is something that I'm pursuing more and learning to market more, that I'm, you know, offering these services.
Yeah, nice. So if people do want to reach out and get coached, is the best way just DM you on Instagram, or have you got like a form in your bio? Or
I've got a link in bio for an application form. There's also a contact section. But honestly, the easiest way is just swipe up on a story or just message me directly and be like, hey, do you do coaching? ? I have questions. And then ask as many as you want, and I'll respond within 24 hours pretty much all the time.
Nice, man. Well, I mean, I don't want to eat up too much of your time, so is there any final remarks, any passing things that you would like to touch on or say before we close it off?
No, I don't think so, no.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming. Hit that.
Cool.
Nice. We're done.
See you.